I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
will the Prime Minister end his deadly drug decriminalization experiment today?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Addictions and Health.
Speaker, on this side of the House, we are committed to saving lives and making sure people who use drugs don't die alone. We moved forward with a decriminalization pilot project at BC's request and have always maintained it would be rigorously monitored and adjusted as needed. We know a full suite of tools, including harm reduction, are needed. Even the MP from Caribou Prince George knows it. He said himself, quote, I asked if safe injection sites were helping. They did say that safe injection sites probably do help. Mr. Speaker, every tool, every resource to save lives is what we are committed to.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. This morning, La Presse reported on 5 families of Indian origin crammed into one apartment because of the housing crisis. It's outrageous to see such a thing in Canada, but sadly, this is the reality for thousands of asylum seekers. They arrive here and they realize that they don't even have the right to work to support themselves because the federal government takes 2 years to give them work permits. Then they realize that it now takes Ottawa 38 months to process asylum applications. 38 months, Mr. Speaker. How many more families will have to endure these inhumane conditions before the federal government finally speeds up processing times? The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Citizenship. Well, first, I'd like to correct a mistake the members made. He said it takes 2 years to issue work permits, but in fact, it's 3 months. We need to be honest and speak the truth on the floor of the House of Commons. Now, listening to the member, I would imagine that he will support our budget, which gives provinces billions of dollars for housing in particular. As for asylum seekers and intake of asylum seekers, I do think that we can do better, but Quebec and Canada will have to work together. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. I think it's longer than 3 months, Mr. Speaker. Now, these are the same families lining up at overstretched food banks in Parc Extension and elsewhere. They've been living in poverty for years because the federal government is preventing them from working. And they're living in poverty, so they can't even focus on their asylum claims. I would like to quote Franz André from the Comité d'Action des Personnes Sans Statut. He said, these people experience anxiety every day. This leads to mental health problems. They want an answer, even if it's a no, as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, could there please be a bit more humanity and fewer bureaucratic delays? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Well, over the past few months, we have decreased processing times. We can continue to do even better. I understand from the member that he wants to proceed to regularization, so I expect them to support our legislation to regularize those living in Canada. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, I'd like to quote what Quebec's immigration minister said this morning.
How many scandals do you think Trudeau has had? I have another video over here showing how many, and it is a lot. And I think shame needs to be brought back into Canada because he has no shame anymore. And I think it just trickles down to everyone underneath him. And that's what's really frustrating about Trudeau. And as far as an election is concerned, obviously there should have been one a year ago. But do you think it'll really be in October 2025? Because his steam, like all he has to do is smile and for the camera, go on his vacations. There's going to be a new love in his life coming up, probably, because he has to, because he needs to take attention away from himself. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Let's go back to the video.
Quebec is still taking in too many asylum seekers. The federal government needs to distribute them across Canada. Mr. Speaker, on the one hand, Quebec's intake capacity has been exceeded, and on the other hand, the federal immigration department is racking up delays in processing applications. And what's the result of that? Families are plunged into poverty because of the federal government's incompetence when it comes to immigration. These are people, human beings, not numbers. Will the minister do his job? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. That is beyond absurd, Mr. Speaker, but it's so typical of the Bloc to make these ridiculous accusations. Typical Bloc Québécois.
The honourable member from Foothills.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians are skipping.
I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
Meals and food banks are overwhelmed. 83% of Canadians are paying $80 more a month for food than they were just 6 months ago. According to Second Harvest, more than half of the food banks in the Toronto area can't meet demand, and they're putting families on wait lists. Families can't afford to put food on the table, and the crisis is getting worse when the Liberal NDP government increases the carbon tax 23%. Will the Prime Minister reverse his decision to increase the carbon tax, pass 234 in its original form, so Canadians don't have to dumpster dive for their dinner?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
As the member well knows, Bill C-234 is in the hands of the Conservative House Leader. The member should speak to him.
The honourable member for Foothills.
This NDP Liberal government isn't worth the cost of food. While Canadians are skipping meal, the ministers who are in charge of lowering food costs for Canadians is rubbing shoulders with Hollywood celebrities and political elites at the most expensive dinner imaginable. He's dining out at the White House on the taxpayer dime. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, he's out to lunch and the ministers are out of touch. Will the Champagne Coalition and Caviar Caucus lower food costs for Canadians and pass 234 in its original form?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Good.
Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, we presented our budget to deliver fairness for every generation. Because right now, a nurse or a carpenter can pay taxes at a higher marginal rate than a multimillionaire. That's not fair, and we're changing it. But, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have said that they are opposed to our budget. And that is because the only thing they know how to do is cut, austerity, and quietly to keep on delivering tax breaks to their rich friends.
Okay.
The honourable member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Food banks in Canada are being pushed to the brink with high demand and donations not keeping pace. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, that was this morning's headline. Canadian families cannot afford to buy food, and our farmers who grow food face punishment, not progress. No farms means no food. From high cost to empty store shelves, this...
I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
Prime Minister and his costly carbon tax are not worth the cost. So will the Prime Minister finally axe the carbon tax so our farm families can stay in business and Canadian families aren't forced to use food banks?
Good question. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our government believes in fairness for every generation, especially younger Canadians. That's why we are investing in building more homes faster. We're investing in making life more affordable with programs like early learning and childcare and dental care. And we're investing in jobs and growth. And we're paying for it by asking those at the top to contribute a little bit more. But the Conservatives are opposed to our plan. The only thing they believe in is austerity and quietly giving tax breaks to their rich friends.
Freeland doing a good job. She is the finance minister and the vice president of Canada. And she is the one that just looks like her head is just spinning when she talks. It's always like trying to drag it on, never answer a question. And maybe they should have this I thought they would always do this. When they ask a question, say, do you mind after you finish it if you give me 5 seconds to say if you answered it or not for our listeners? Because it is so frustrating. Everything is an infomercial with both of them. And that's something that I think needs to be stopped. Maybe the whole Constitution and the human rights and everything needs to be rewritten again after those two are gone, because this is just frustrating what they're doing. Anyway, let's go back to the video.